How would Rohit Sharma have been remembered if Sky had not taken that catch? Or even just touched the Toblerone? Or maybe it did move, but the cameras didn't quite pick it up the way that it should have been. But how would Rohit's legacy be if India had lost that game? He's an IPL legend without any doubt, but he doesn't have major Indian success. As a test player, he was a late bloomer. Obviously, he's come on brilliantly. In World Cups, he's been ridiculously good at times, but without a trophy. So let's say Sky doesn't take that catch, or his foot does hit the Toblerone, or the Toblerone moves just on its own, right? What happens to Rohit Sharma's legacy at that point? Because now it's safe and clean. But it wouldn't have been before, because there were so many people who were split on him. And it's not just about Rohit Sharma, it's about the entire Indian team. For 11 years, they have been bilateral goats, just going around and tearing people up. But they haven't managed to win anything when trophies come along. And because of all those losses, they're under pressure that just normal athletes never even have to worry about. Because what we saw with Sky's foot means that millimeters on the other side, perhaps David Miller goes on to win this game. And the thing that dominates all the conversation is, again, India are absolutely brilliant until it matters. The 11-year-old narrative that will not die. That India can win anything that is not a trophy. But instead, Suryakumar Yadav, Sky, his foot landed on the right side. The foot of God saved India, and they won the World Cup.
Oh, hi there. If you like cricket in a way that brings you to, the Good Areas channel, then I think we have the game for you. Hit Wicket is a mobile game that is way more than just about, smashing your screen. It's about strategy and what you really try and do inside a cricket game. However, there's still a little bit of fun and gaming involved because you can get superpowers when you get things right. And it's not just about playing either. You can build your own team and coach it and manage it and do all those other things that, let's be honest, you really want to do all the time when it comes to cricket. So download the game now. Bring out the cricket pundit in you and download Hit Wicket free for mobile. Because Hit Wicket is a cricket game made for you. Stick it in your pocket today.
People don't remember this much anymore, but Sri Lanka had a great white ball team for a long period of time. They made the 2007 World Cup final. They made the 2009 T20 World Cup final. They made the 2011 World Cup final and the 2012. They had great bowlers, great batting. They often had depth and variations that they could use. There was just so much good cricketers that they had in one group, all at that one time. And yet in the 2007 World Cup, they go up against probably the greatest one-day side of all time in Australia, and Australia go through them. In 2009 World Cup, they go up against one of the best T20 players of all time, even though he didn't actually play all that much T20 cricket, in Shahid Afridi, and they lose that one. In 2011, it's India, and it feels like destiny is completely against them. And in 2012, Sri Lanka are at home against West Indies when no one knew West Indies was going to go and change T20 cricket over the next little period. So for a long period of time, Sri Lanka were absolutely brilliant. But Mahela and Kumar and Malinga and all the greats that they had around at that period couldn't actually get a title. And so they were almost forgotten. But the thing is, when they finally won that trophy, it didn't really matter after. Now, I'm sure they are still annoyed if they go back to those other tournaments and they think to themselves, oh, if we'd done this and we'd done that, we would have put ourselves in a position to be even better. I'm sure they have all of those regrets. But you just have to win one. And that was the problem with India, right? It didn't matter that they should have won more than one. It really mattered that they hadn't even won a single time. And they were even better bilaterally than Sri Lanka was. In fact, we were inventing new tournaments like the World Test Championship, which seemed to be something that would just come in so that India could lose another final. That's how bad it had gotten. India won absolutely everything until the game really mattered, and suddenly they were nowhere to be found. So this one changes everything. And you look at the Indian lineup for this game and you see so many players whose reputation is completely going to be changed because of that. What about Jasprit Bumrah? For me, he was absolutely the player of this tournament. I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone as in control of the ball as Jasprit Bumrah was in this tournament. And I just watched Jasprit Bumrah in the IPL, and I think he was even better in this one. But I'd already heard whispers that Jasprit Bumrah was either too injured, or played great for Mumbai, but not great enough for India. Or when India really needed him to be incredible in major semi-finals and finals, he wasn't absolutely brilliant. For someone as great as he is, there was an awful lot of whispers that Jasprit Bumrah might not have been quite at the level needed for India to get by. All of those whispers just stop now. What about Sky? I couldn't actually believe it when people started saying things like, oh, he can only make runs against poor teams. I mean, that innings against South Africa in the last T20 World Cup, what are we even talking about here? But in the semi-final, he completely showed who he was at an important time. Even that innings against Australia was incredibly important. This guy's a late blooming cricketer who's obviously been very important for Mumbai and now has won a title for India. It feels like to me his legacy is pretty solid from here, right? Even if he drops off and he never goes on to be the absolute great we all thought he was going to be. And I've been thinking a lot about Shivam Dube. Shivam Dube was one of the many Indian players I was told had to be dropped for this final. Shivam really makes sense to me because the threat of Shivam Dube was so big. But there was a point when he was batting in the final, especially when he first came out, and they still needed a few extra runs. And I thought to myself, if he fails here, and India end up 10 runs short, and South Africa chase this easily, this is the guy that is going to take all the flack. Right? Despite the fact that they made the final without him actually having to do all that much all the way through, if he fails here, he's going to be blamed for something that has very little to do with him. This is the thing about cricket teams. We end up absolutely obsessing about the 9th, 10th or 11th best players when they generally don't have that much of an impact on a game. Luckily for Shivam Dube, he got a couple of boundaries away and, India won the game. Those boundaries he hit were quite important when you look at the final scoreline. The other big issue that kept coming up with the Indian team was the whole Akshar and Jadeja thing, being the exact same player. And I get it. From an 11 point of view, it is not ideal to have two players that are essentially almost exactly the same. However, when those two players are all-rounders, it's kind of not as big an issue as you might think it could be. Do you know which teams would have liked to have had a similar problem with their spin that India had? Every other single team. Australia would have taken both of those guys over Adam Zampa and whichever part-time spinner they had to use behind him. England would have traded in Adil Rashid for both of those guys. They're that good with bat, ball, and in the field. But again, you look back at this and you think of this game, and Jadeja bowls one over and gets hit. Akshar Patel ended up with a lot of runs, but also chewed up a lot of time to get that good strike rate, and then got smashed everywhere in the most important over that looked like it was going to lose India the World Cup. We all know what would have happened if India had lost this World Cup. Akshar Patel would have been absolutely decimated by his own fan base. And it's not even just the players. Think about Rahul Dravid for a moment. It's really weird that in some ways this entire reign has come from three different coaches. Anil Kumble and Ravi Shastri. They all share a little bit of the blame. But no one's going to remember that. They're usually going to remember the last coach. And in Rahul Dravid's case, the amount of times I've been told that he can't possibly understand attacking cricket because of the way that he played. Rahul Dravid understands attacking cricket. He may not have been able to play attacking cricket. It may not have been who he was as a person, but there's no doubt that he understood what India needed to do. He wanted them to be more attacking with the bat and more attacking with the ball. And that comes back to Rohit Sharma, who we mentioned at the top. His legacy would have been completely tainted. Think about what would have happened if India had lost this game and he'd gone for 9 runs from 5 balls and was the king of intent. But that forgets what he actually did in this tournament. He freed up India by playing in such a way to say, look, we're just going to go out there and back our talent over and over again. Even when Rohit made mistakes in this game as a captain, like giving the spinners extra overs, he did that from a position of going, I back our talent. I back my talent. I back your talent. And we're going to go out there and try and whack it. What about Hardik Pandya? Was there a more hated man, well, at least inside Mumbai, but really right across the IPL? He burnt the Gujarat fans, right? And then he went to Mumbai and he burnt a whole new bunch of fans. The amount of times I was told he shouldn't be in the squad, let alone the side, just again and again. And look at what he did today. He did, well, very little with the bat. But with the ball, he had to step up. He's really the difference between them winning and losing this game, because the spinners didn't get them anywhere. He had to bowl extra seam, and then he had to bowl the overs at the very most important times. Forget the last over, because kind of anything could have happened there. But that earlier over, that was incredible. And getting Heinrich Klaasen and David Miller out, I don't know if it's going to change people's opinions of Hardik Pandya right now, but there is going to be a period in the future when people look back and go, oh, that was the guy that got Miller and Klaasen out in that World Cup that we won. That's a lot different than the guy that was booed by his own fans a couple of weeks ago. And you can't mention all of this without coming back to Virat Kohli. The truth is that despite the fact that Virat Kohli was a World Cup winner, it's different for him. He hasn't won the IPLs. He has been the star of Indian cricket for so long while they have been losing. The greatest player in the team that can't win a trophy. And even if you regress to the anchor model today, the fact that Virat Kohli kept doing what Rohit was doing and showing intent and trying to score for the majority of this tournament actually again allowed everyone else to play with a sense of freedom. When your most important player is willing to put the team success above their individual runs, that's really important. But we also know the other thing about Virat Kohli. And that was the fact that coming into this game, again, people were saying that Virat Kohli should be dropped. I'm not sure why they needed to make a change from a team that hadn't lost a game yet. And I'm also not sure when you're facing a great bowling attack why you would actually want to take out one of your best batting talents. But that's a different question. Then he goes out there, and of course they do lose early wickets, and they have to regress again. But he didn't regress in a way that perhaps they did in 2019 or in 2022. Instead, there was still a little bit of intent there. They were still pushing. Perhaps not as hard as many of the intent merchants like me out there would have liked. But they did put a little bit of pressure back. And mostly it was because Akshar couldn't get the boundaries away that they actually were a little bit slower. But that's the great thing about this innings of Virat Kohli, because people are going to be talking about this for a long time for so many different reasons. Because at the halfway point of this game, this was Schrodinger's Kohli. We had no idea if he just played the innings that had won India the World Cup, or if he had played the innings that was actually going to mean that South Africa were going to get home. And think about what happened after that. Think about specifically how you viewed Virat Kohli's innings while Heinrich Klaasen was hitting sixes and fours everywhere. Schrodinger's Kholi. But what about South Africa? This is a team that I have been obsessed with for quite some time. And I'm not talking about back to 1992, although I'm also talking about back to 1992. They weren't actually that close in the game in 1992. In 1996, they made a mistake by not picking Alan Donald, but the West Indies were probably a better team. In 1999, let's be truly honest here, Australia and South Africa choked. It just happened to be that South Africa were the last team to choke in that game. In 2003, they didn't understand the piece of paper in front of them. Not ideal. And we can keep going all the way up to Roelof van der Merwe being a South African player playing for the Netherlands, taking the catch that sent them out of that World Cup. There's always something like that. And we can come all the way to the last few years when Grant Elliott and Roelof van der Merwe both kicked them out of World Cups. And they were South Africans now playing for other teams. But the truth is that South Africa had a very narrow path to victory all the way through. They needed to take early wickets, which they got through a little bit of luck. I mean, Maharaj wasn't even bowling good and he had 2 wickets. Then they needed Heinrich Klaasen to go up against the spinners on a wicket that wasn't ragging sideways. They got that as well. But it would be unfair to say that India have won this World Cup just because South Africa choked, because quite a few things happened here. The first is that South Africa do not have a number 7. They certainly don't have a number 8. And by the time we get to number 9, we're getting very bad. And I've been writing about this for a long time, that a lot of South Africa's problems in knockout games come down to the fact that their flaws usually get exposed. Once Heinrich Klaasen went out, they had Marco Jansen coming in, the giant praying mantis with a bat. They didn't want him in that early. But even if you go before that, think about the Bumrah over. So South Africa get it to 30 from 30. But it's not a normal 30 from 30, is it? Because 12 of those balls have to be bowled by Jasprit Bumrah, who almost slipped 2 balls through Heinrich Klaasen. Heinrich Klaasen was playing cricket like it was in a video game up until that point, and then Bumrah came on and everything changed. He put a lot more pressure on. Then there was a delay. Exactly what South Africa would not wanted. They were just strolling through the overs, smashing 4s, putting pressure on, doing whatever they wanted. Suddenly they had to sit there and think about it for a couple of minutes, and Heinrich Klaasen gets a nick to a poor ball and is out. That is what exposes South Africa's main problem. They don't really have a number 7. And Marco Jansen has to come out and bat. And he doesn't just have to come out and bat. He is going to have to face Jasprit Bumrah at one stage. And Bumrah goes straight through. And from that moment onwards, India have a very good chance of winning. There is no South African in the world who was watching that and was completely positive from that moment onwards. India failing to win a trophy, that was a flare-up, a small little period of time. You want to know about a real curse? Talk to South Africans. 32 years of heartbreak. And that 32-year thing is really important as well. Let's think about Indians. It's an incredibly young society in India at the moment. And that was one thing I couldn't get my head around. Why were these Indian fans so upset when A, their team was playing really good in bilateral cricket, so they had plenty of wins to enjoy, and B, they had won in 2011 and 2013. And it was only when I started to look into it, I realized that for a lot of people, they actually missed that. They were like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 when those games happened. They couldn't really get to enjoy it the way a fan does when they've lived through an experience. It was right at the start of their life, or even before they were really understanding what cricket was. And so for so many of these Indian fans, what they saw was their team absolutely smash everyone until the trophy came up. And that was their entire lived-in experience. Now, it may have only been 10 years, but if 10 years is like 2/3 of your life, that's a lot of time. It doesn't matter if it's 32 years or 11 years at a certain point, right? It matters how much of your life it is. And there's something else when it comes to the Indian cricket team. There's something about the identity of that team that it isn't like one person, even though they have incredible stars. And it isn't just a cricket team from India. It is part of the national identity. And that is a huge thing when it's a country that in every other way is becoming this incredible superpower. And in one very big way, the sport that so many of them love, they can't get a friggin' trophy to put in a cabinet. And you watch Indian cricket and you do realize it is a collective. It breathes, it cries, it rises, it falls on millions of people all in one moment. It's really not like any other sporting team we've ever seen anywhere before. The stakes are always so high, and they're so high for everyone. And so think about that. We've talked about the legacy of all these individual players and the coaching and everything else. But realistically, think about this. Millions and millions of people rose and potentially were going to fall on the fate of a couple of millimeters. What if Heinrich Klaasen had missed that ball from Hardik Pandya? South Africa probably just go on to win that game really easy. And then we come back to Sky's foot. As I said at the start, I have no idea what happened with that foot. I thought I saw the Toblerone move, and then later, I thought I didn't see the Toblerone move. It's possible that he touched it and it didn't move. It's possible that he didn't touch it and something else moved. It's possible that he was millimeters on either side of it. But this is what I do know. Because of Sky's foot of God, India won a World Cup that they had deserved many times over the last 11 years. And every one of those losses that broke all those millions of hearts so many times, as hard as all of that was, that makes this one time of winning by millimeters worth so much more. This World Cup you can catch us every single day over at Jarrod Kimber Live. It is like the videos here, except they come out quicker and I forget what I'm saying occasionally. We have sometimes up to 3 videos a day on that channel, but we usually just have our scoreboard and normal podcasts. But sometimes when a game is good, I just gots to go live. So gorge yourself over at Jarrod Kimber Live on my, liveness?